Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're looking at achieving better half-tone black and white images in Photoshop. Before we begin, I have more Photoshop training at Skillshare.com. When you sign up for Skillshare, you get access to thousands of classes there, including over 200 of mine. In the description below is a Skillshare coupon for you, which is at least as good as the current Skillshare offer, and typically mine is better. Please feel free to share this coupon with family and friends. So first of all, thank you very much to the subscriber who asked this question, and what they wanted was a better resulting half-tone black and white image. Now that was as a comment on an Illustrator class of mine, but in actual fact you won't be able to get nearly these results in Illustrator, and I strongly suggest that if you have Photoshop you use Photoshop. Now there is a trick to achieving really good half-tones in Photoshop, so let's go and have a look at how we're going to approach this. We're going to start with a black and white image. If we want that to be editable later on, we would choose layer and then new adjustment layer, and we would come down here to black and white, and this will give us an editable black and white. Now this is going to be important because this would allow us to take some colors to white and some to black. We're just going to leave this for now. Now I want to apply my filters to a smart object, so again I can continue to edit this image. So I'm going to select not only my black and white adjustment layer but also the background layer of this image, right click and choose convert to smart object. Now this is a embedded smart object, which means we can get to this file at any time and make alterations to it. There are two ways that you can apply halftones in Photoshop. One works really well, one is pretty awful. The pretty awful one is to choose filter and then go to the filter gallery. There's a halftone pattern here in the sketch area. Let me just size this image down. Now I chose this image because it didn't have anything particularly special about it. I want to be able to achieve this result with just any image, not something that was purposely selected for it. So this is the halftone pattern, and you can adjust the size of the halftone pattern, but what you'll find is it looks a bit fluffy, and these are not circles. So I think this is a really not very good halftone tool. So I'm not going to use it, I'll just cancel out of here. There's a better halftone tool, and it's actually a color halftone. So we'll go to filter and then go down here to pixelate, and we're going to pick up this color halftone. Now the trick to this is if you want it to be black and white, you make channels 1, 2, 3 and 4, the CMYK channels, all the same number, and if they're the exact same number, it doesn't matter what the number is, they just have to be all the exact same number, then you're going to get a black and white halftone. If these are different numbers, you're going to get the colors breaking away. Nice effect, but not what we're here to do today. I've chosen 45 because it's a nice halftone effect. The dots are sort of on an angle rather than being in a grid. If you want a grid, then make it 90. So 90 for channels 1, 2, 3 and 4. The maximum radius is just how big the dots are. I've already tried it on this image. 15 works pretty well. I'll just click OK. The beauty of applying a halftone this way is that you can get back to it. So we can just double click on the halftone here. And if we think that 15 is too big or too small, well, we can change it. I'm just going to make it 20. You can see that it's an editable effect. Let me just double click on that and let's go back to the 15. Now the problem, as I said, in this halftone is that these dots are running into each other. If we have a look in the black areas of the image, we haven't got separate dots, we've just got big black blobs. Now the reason for this is that we've got black in the underlying image. So let's go and see the underlying image. I'm just going to double click here on the little icon in the bottom right corner of the thumbnail. That will get me back to the smart object. So this is the original image. Now what I'm going to do is something a bit here so that we can see everything all at once. Let's just go and get these two images, which is the one that we just created, and let me just close these down. So this is the one we just created, and this is its embedded smart object. It helps to be able to see both on the screen at the same time, because then you can go and make changes to the embedded smart object and you can see what the result is in the final image. So here in the embedded smart object, I've got it selected, so we're seeing this in the layers palette. If we were over here, we'd be seeing that in the layers palette. So just make sure you're looking at the right image. Now, the problem that we decided was with this black area was it's too black. If we can make this grey, then we're going to get dots like where it's over here, it's grey. But if we make it too grey, it's going to run into the sky. So let's go and see what we could do with it. I'm going to double click on this black and white adjustment layer, because one of the benefits of using this particular adjustment layer rather than just desaturating the image is that you can take various colours to white or to black. So what I can do is take the blues in the image to white, and when I do that, the dots are going to appear more spaced out over here. Now we can check it by just going to File and Save. As soon as I save this image, this one updates, and you can see that we've got a lot less detail in the sort of white areas of the image, but it hasn't really solved our black problem yet. Our black problem is actually not going to be highly solvable through this tool, because that original saddle was fairly dark. If I just turn this layer off, you'll see that the saddle was black, and so just changing a color here is not going to help that, but it does help the rest of the image. So you may want to sort of mess around in here to just get a better black and white, but ignore the sort of black areas, because we've got another solution for those in a minute. When you finish up with this image, you'll just go to File and Save. You're saving the embedded smart object. You can have a look at the result in the final image, the one that has the halftone filter applied to it. But as I said, the solution that we've got is not solving the problem over here with the saddle. The problem with the saddle is we have to make it grey. So here is a solution, an unusual use of a tool. I'm going to choose Layer and New Adjustment Layer. Again, I'm doing it as an adjustment layer so that we can edit it. I'm going to Levels. Now, if you're familiar with levels, you'll know that generally you use levels to make an image sort of more contrasty. So if we drag in here and drag in here, you can see that we're getting a much more contrasty image, but the saddle's just gone blacker than it was originally. So we're just going to go back to the original settings. There's a set of adjusters in this dialog that I advise you never to use until today, because here it's going to really help us. And what this does is, instead of making the blacks blacker, it makes the blacks grayer. So let's just drag in here, and you can see that the black areas are becoming more grey. If we can make them grey, then we're going to get a better halftone effect over here. So let's just go and save that image and see what's happening. And here you can see, if we just zoom in, we're going to get a much better result in this halftone. We've got black dots instead of big black blobs. The problem is that alongside the black dots is that we've lost a lot of contrast in the remainder of the image. So what we want is something sort of between where we were and where we are now. I'm just going to close down the levels, because I'm happy with the effect it's having on the saddle, not necessarily the rest of the image. Well, there's a mask associated with this adjustment layer. There's always a mask associated with every adjustment layer, but you could have added your own anyway. So I'm going to target the mask on this adjustment layer. That's the levels one. And what I'm going to do is fill this mask with a gradient. I'm going to select the gradient tool. I'm going to choose a black to white gradient here. Let me just undo the reverse. And what I'll do is target the mask here, so make sure that there's a little box around the mask. I'm going to drag in from this side to try and improve the result. Now, what that's done is done exactly the opposite of what I want. I'm getting black where the effect is being removed over on this side, and white, it's not being affected over here. In actual fact, I do want to reverse this gradient. So I'll just click on reverse. Don't have to undo this gradient. I'm just going to dump it back in. But this time it's going to appear in the opposite direction. So you can see the grey is affecting here, but the rest of the camel is pretty good color. We actually want to start our gradient just beyond the edge of this saddle. So I'm just going to drag it out here so that this area is all grey and this area is blacker or more contrasty. So let's have a look at the result of that in our image. And we're getting a lot more of these big dots in this area of the image. So we've got readable dots in this area, as well as in the camel itself. So in the camel's face and across here. So by making those greys pretty much the same grey, We're not seeing a degradation of the image just because it's working pretty well in this image, because it's black and white and set of dots. We're not sort of losing the detail that we wanted in the image, but we're getting dots instead of big black blobs, and you're not really seeing where that gradient is. You couldn't tell that there was a gradient applied to an adjustment layer in this image. It's pretty obvious here that there's something wrong with the image. This is not nearly as detailed as you would expect it to be. It looks sort of grey, but here in the final image it's acceptable. So those are some of the tricks about creating halftone effects in Photoshop. If you want to have dots that are separated, then you have to use grey and not black. The closer you get to black, the more you're just going to get splodge here instead of really nice dots. You'll need to build some sort of contrast into the image so you get the result that you want. You can do that by using a smart object and just applying adjustment layers to the image until you craft an image that looks the way you want it to look when you apply the halftone filter to it. Of course, it doesn't matter what it looks like just in terms of being edited. The question is, how does it look when you actually apply a halftone filter to it? So I hope that this has been of help to you. The reason why this doesn't work in Illustrator is because you just don't have the same tools for crafting a image that will give you a better halftone effect. So it's really much better done in Photoshop. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you've learned things about Photoshop of which you were previously unaware. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you'll be alerted when new videos are released. Until next time, my name's Helen Bradley. Thank you so much for joining me here on my YouTube channel.